Good morning, and welcome to Chapel Chat. I'm Pastor Kevin Little, and this is the chapel at Rantoul First United Methodist Church. I'm sorry, but it's been a while since I've posted, but we're back, and hopefully I'll be able to get back into a regular schedule. I don't know if you know this or not, but Advent season is a very busy time for everyone, but it's especially busy for pastors. Now, of course, Lent is coming up in a few weeks also, so we'll be right back into busy season once again. But I'm hoping to get into a solid pattern again with these. So today I want to talk about disagreement. Pastor Emily had a conversation in one of her recent seminary classes about levels of disagreement on topics. And those levels were kind of exploring the idea that for each of us, there are certain things we're willing to accept and not be bothered by. There are things we accept and are willing to compromise about, and there are certain things that we're just not going to compromise about at all. And those things that we aren't willing to accept a difference of perspective about are also things that we will fight about, whether that's verbally, or on Facebook, or going to actual combat over. Let me give you an example. In 1977, George Lucas released a movie that changed my life. Now, I was just one, but Star Wars became a constant in my life at a very early point. In one scene in the movie, Han Solo was sitting in a booth across from a Rodian named Greedo. Greedo was a bounty hunter who was going to take Han, dead or alive, to Jabba the Hutt, a gangster that Han used to work for. And in a moment of cold-blooded survival of the fittest, Han shoots Greedo from under the table. For 20 years, there was no dispute about how all of this plays out. But then, in 1997, George Lucas re-releases the original Star Wars movies to drum up interest before the new movie, The Phantom Menace, comes out in 1999. And for whatever reason that I'm happy to talk about for hours on end, he decides to make modifications to the movie and bring it more in line with his original vision for things if he'd had the technology available. In this new version of the original movie that had guided my life up to that point, Greedo shoots at Han and misses, prompting Han to shoot back in self-defense. What? Everything that has happened in my life up to this point is now in question. History hadn't just been rewritten, it had been altered. Now, an entire generation of young people, like my naive and easily manipulated younger brother that I took to see the movie, or even my unborn son who was experiencing Star Wars for the first time in the womb, would grow up thinking that Greedo had shot first. If Greedo shot first, then the selfish and ruthless smuggler, who eventually softened and became a selfless leader in the rebellion, doesn't really have as much of a compelling story arc in his character. It changes the entire foundation of who he was. Some of you are watching this and wondering what on earth this has to do with anything, because it doesn't really affect you. Welcome to the first level of our disagreement topic. It doesn't affect you. And because of that, my personal feelings on the matter don't have any bearing on your life. Cool, right? The next level would be that I firmly believe that Han shot Greedo in cold blood, and you believe that Greedo shot first. We both have evidence to support our arguments. I can pull up a copy of the original film from 1977 to prove my point. You can pull an updated copy from 1997 and prove yours. We can just agree to disagree and still be friends who like Star Wars. Or, and to be perfectly honest, this was definitely where I landed for years after the movies were re-released. Han shot Greedo in cold blood, and anyone who thinks otherwise cannot be allowed to continue to think otherwise. I was willing to bludgeon anyone who disagreed with the overpowering logic of my argument. And if that didn't work, increasing hostilities were certainly on the table. There was no grace. There was no agreeing to disagree. Nothing beyond I'm right and you need to see it that way, or else. Now, just so you know, I have softened on this since because there is certainly evidence for people accepting that Greedo shot first. or at all, especially in the newer generations who just don't know any better. But regardless of how righteous my indignation was, and it definitely was righteous, there wasn't really a point in being angry at an entire generation of people. Right now, a lot of what is happening in the world is indicative of these levels of disagreement. But a lot more seems to be landing on the level of aggression, arguing, and general combat. There's a lot less agreeing to disagree, and even less of people just realizing that something doesn't affect them and they don't have to worry about it. This applies to our current arguments in the United Methodist churches too. For some of us, we are okay with agreeing to disagree about the issues that are causing a small number of churches to leave the denomination. And that number really is still small in the grand scheme of things. We hear about one or two here and there around us, and when you add it up, it comes out to about 3,000 nationally so far. But there are over 80,000 United Methodist churches in the United States. So that's less than 4%. For some of us, these arguments about human sexuality and how to deal with it don't really affect us, and we just want to come to church and worship and move on. For others, like myself, we're willing to be content to agree to disagree and still be friends, worshiping God and trusting that He has it all under control. For others, either you're with them or you're against them, and there is no room for people who are against them. And this is happening on both sides of the discussion, not just one or the other. And so for churches who are made up of people who think like that, then it makes sense for them to go their own way. The United Methodist Church in particular, and Methodism in general, has always kind of embraced the idea that people can disagree on things and still be here and be okay. We don't always get it right, but it's always been there under the surface. Jesus walked among us and brought a new way of looking at things. He healed, he walked with, taught, and was friends with people that the rest of society thought were outcasts and wouldn't be welcome. Jesus spoke the truth and let other people either come to see his way or go on their own way. And that's how I try to be. And that's how I see the United Methodist Church. We're open to everybody, whether you agree with everything I think and say or not. Even if you disagree with this, I respect your ability to disagree with it. It's okay. We can still be friends, unless you think we can't be friends. But that's on you and not me. I'll still be here in the chapel with the door open, ready to chat. Thanks for joining me for another chapel chat. I'll see you again next time. Have a great week.